Greetings, everyone. I'm excited to welcome Tom Ross, CEO of Andgo Systems, to the show today. Tom, welcome.
Thank you, Ben. Very excited and happy to be here.
Yeah, great to have you here. So before we dive into some of the questions, let's first start with a little bit about your SaaS background. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So got started with Andgo here back in 2014 when we founded the company. Originally we didn't start off as a SaaS company. We were a contracting company, agency work, trading time for money, building solutions bit by bit. Over that, we sort of evolved into, subject matter experts and became more consultants, professional services of that side. And then really that SaaS conversion happened around 2019. And so this really was kind of my introduction into SaaS. And of course, you're always in the tech industry aware of it and knowledge of it, but it really was sort of a baptism by fire as we kind of dove into that fully as far as, the world of SaaS and the whole different metrics and items there that you're the expert on and stuff. And so that really was the beginning of my SaaS journey, sort of from that real life experience.
Yeah, interesting. And now your background, Tom, I mean, are you technical? Were you business? Like where are your roots?
Absolutely. So I'm on the business side of things. So my co-founder is our CTO, and he handles, the back of house, the engineering side of things. And so for the first few years, it was myself and, like 8 or 9 engineers. And so I graduated university here, College of Commerce, University of Saskatchewan, and I've been on kind of lean towards more of that sales side, that customer support side of things there. And so it was a really nice compliment, to manage really the front of house aspects of all things business as we grew and scaled, and having a partner that, took care of the back end, had a sound, solid product.
Okay, because I saw on LinkedIn, it says CEO, but you're also original co-founder with your CTO.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So he actually started, interesting enough, he started this project as an independent contractor, and we sort of expanded on that. And then we've evolved over time, into that SaaS company that we are today. And so when we formed this in 2014, it's sort of like a reoccurring theme. It's really about like the pursuit of opportunity. There was some interesting work. It was growing beyond what he was interested in doing as an individual. And so we wanted to formalize it and put some structure around it. And then really also to capture the opportunity. Right, that was sort of the main thesis. And so as we nurtured and grew that's where I got involved, and then we formalized it and formed a company around it. And that's when we started, all the way back in 2014, which is like 100 years in startup world, right?
So, that's what it seems like. Yeah, so many new startups. Yeah. So interesting. So you founded in 2014, but started as an agency and then converted into SaaS. And you see that a lot, it seems like, services businesses, agency businesses, a lot of time, trading that time for money, and then try to convert that or productize that knowledge.
Absolutely. No different here, really. And again, you kind of that theme about like sort of pursuing that opportunity and recognizing like the significance of the problem that we were solving, right? It wasn't unique to a couple individuals. This was sort of, and we'll dive into what we're doing a little bit later, but specifically around this was challenges. The solution that we were developing and tools that we were developing addressed a challenge that was ubiquitous across, pick an industry, any sort of hourly staff. And so when we recognized that opportunity and sort of pursued it, that's where then, the maturity of the tools and the solutions that we're developing, our expertise, basically, and then also just a great way to fund, the initial iterations of the platform and the program, right? Is getting customers to pay for it. And so that was, I say in one regard, we never set out to be where we are today, but at the same time, we also did, right? It was also about realizing and actualizing this opportunity that was before us. And so that's sort of what led us to this path. But, you can kind of connect the dots looking back, but if I'm being honest with myself, what we thought, what we were going to do and the purpose of what we're going to do, it sort of morphed into something more than what we had originally thought, which is exciting, right? So,
yeah, really exciting. I love that, right? You saw that pattern wasn't unique to a couple of individuals. I see that a lot in SaaS finance accounting, same thing over and over, and then you can apply that pattern and create more out of that. So yeah, really interesting. So tell us a little bit about Andgo. What does it do?
Yeah, absolutely. So what Andgo provides, the value that we're providing the market is around automation of HR workflows, specifically around filling vacant shifts. So Andgo is a shift fill automation provider. So what does that mean? Great, some nice words. What does that really mean? And what it means is that, as the difference between sort of to understand the category that we play in. Like a lot of folks are familiar with scheduling, right? Scheduling services, scheduling systems, creating that master plan, having that in that schedule, and having it there for all to see. What staffing is really your day of logistics. What happens in the moment, the day of, the planned schedule, and particularly what we're focused on is really around the real-time effective management of the real-time movement of your people. And so, as folks call in sick or as folks miss work for various reasons, what we've found is that the processes to find those replacements for those shifts is incredibly, surprisingly manual, right? What we're talking about is like phone calls in to sort of a central office or a manager, and then, staffing departments looking through and matching, okay, who's eligible to work, who can replace it, and then sending out communications to those folks on a one-to-one basis, or maybe they're using group communications, things like that. And so when we really talk about, there's that scheduling piece, there's the staffing piece, and it's that same day aspect and really around the real-time movement of your staff. And so Andgo is able to automate that. We're able to automate that entire process in line with these organizational and collective requirements. And so we work primarily in healthcare. There's other applications there. Manufacturing, public sector, things like that. But in healthcare, just the example of so when a nurse calls in sick, you need to find a replacement. You can't go without, right? And so the requirements and structure around finding the right person to work that shift is complicated, right? And so this is where Andgo's rules engine and logic can filter through your eligible employees to kind of identify that list of eligible applicants, and then we send out communications via text message, phone call, email, however they want to be notified. They have control over that. They respond to that, and then Andgo can look at the list of respondents and select and identify the most suitable one. And so we're able to automate that entire process that previously took 35 minutes to complete manually down to 0 time or maybe 2 minutes if you want that sort of human touch at the end. And what's really interesting, Ben, is that the tailwinds of COVID here have been incredibly strong for us. We've this problem's always been there, right? And like I said, this problem isn't unique to healthcare. It's present in any sort of situation where you're delivering a critical service. You have staff that you need to replace if they're not going to be able to make it in. And so what ended up happening though is initially our biggest issue or biggest competitor, what I would call would be status quo. It's like, oh, we have a process for that, that's all fine and good. We have tools that can do that. We have a room full of people working on fax machines and phones to get this thing done. And you're like, oh, okay, well, it doesn't really sound like it's working. But what ended up happening during the pandemic is that, that status quo got strained, right? It got put through the ringer. One of our customers, typically you have about 5% of your staff are missing on a given day, right? So they call in sick. Well, during the pandemic, that doubled, right? So you went up to about 10,000, or sorry, up to 10%. And so, one of our customers, they had 3,000 vacancies in a single day, right? This is a large health system in the US. They had 3,000 vacancies in a single day. And so if you can imagine the manual effort it takes to receive 3,000 phone calls, update the schedule 3,000 times, and then call that out, it's significant, right? And so this is where that value is. And so you're at that sort of inflated rate of vacancies, but then you also have with the staffing crisis in healthcare, particularly, every day these organizations are starting each day 8 to 10% short. So you have 18 to 20% of your shifts vacant that you're relying to manually fill. And these are incredible cost drivers of these budgets that are just sort of being done manually. And then the last thing I want to sort of say, just this evolution, is that, what the pandemic has done is it's sort of stressed the need and the importance for insights and analytics on what's happening in the moment, right? And so C-suite's asking hey, how are we doing today? And a lot of these scheduling systems aren't able to provide you with that real-time responsiveness in terms of hey, here's who's sick, here's who's out. And the other thing too, with Andgo, one of our models is sort of internal employees first, find replacements internally first. And a big part of that is integrating across different systems so that we can have that whole holistic view of everything that's going on within an organization. And what I mean by that, an example of this is say you have a unit that has, is out 10 people in a specific day, and you have another unit that's out, 2 people in a specific day. well, in terms of like strategically, well, let's prioritize filling a few of these shifts so that this unit can get up to, you know, operational baseline, you know, before we start filling these other ones. And if you're all siloed and managers are working independently, you don't have that visibility. And so this was sort of a nice byproduct, is that central hub of all these sick calls coming in. You get that data, you get that insight, you can act more strategically in terms of leveraging your existing resources first, and then you can, you know, access and efficiently communicate out to your other employees. So long breakdown by me, but it's something that I'm excited about as far as the outcomes there. So
yeah, obviously passionate, of course. And you know, of course, a lot of scheduling systems out there, which you see, but I like you mentioned, it's like that real-time scheduling, the day of scheduling, people calling in sick, not showing up. Now, how do we get replacements in there? Because you said like healthcare, right? You can't just have, you know, nurses, you know, not backfilling those open vacant positions for that day. So really interesting, that nuance there. And I could see the pandemic, right? Something like, hey, status quo, we're fine. And now, right, that acute, now it becomes that acute pain point, you know.
Absolutely. You can't ignore it anymore, right? It's a top 3 problem. If you look at Becker's or anything like that, you know, staffing is a top 3 problem for these organizations.
And I was going to ask industries, because I used to be in the airline industry, and I knew scheduling, huge complex issue with flight attendants, pilots, you know, aircraft having to be in certain maintenance spaces on certain times, just that complexity. And it just like these programs would run overnight, figure out all the shift scheduling. So really interesting. But you said primarily healthcare, some manufacturing, any other niches that you go after?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I talk about healthcare manufacturing, those are our ICP focus, you know, like our third bucket is whoever calls us, just because we can't boil the ocean, right? We can't go after everything. But what we see, like, again, a lot of this value comes from, you know, when you see these organizations delivering a critical service, and usually with some complex operating requirements. So, you know, I kind of described what a unionized environment would look like, right? Now this isn't unique to unions. We have non-union customers as well. But that's usually sort of a good indicator of, hey, this is probably something that could benefit from our service. In terms of like, you know, specific verticals, like additionally, public sector is a big one. Municipalities fall sort of within that. You look at like service and distribution, retail, and particularly with retail, some of the complexity that's being added to scheduling requirements, just around some of the fair work week legislation that you're seeing being rolled out throughout the country. You see it in New York, Illinois, California, of course. And so this has added this complexity that now what you're seeing a lot of times is you have managers, these highly paid managers that are spending their time, you know, multiple hours a day working on, you know, navigating some of these requirements and complexities. And this is where Andgo can come in and automate these workflows for you so that you're compliant, but then also your employees gain all this accessibility and all this flexibility around their schedule. And as they say, you know, flexibility is the new currency as far as, you know, providing this service to your members.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, coming from the airlines and the unions and the work rules, which, you know, then you have to add all that logic to the system. Plus, maybe Starbucks is going to need you with some of their unionized movements in some of their stores.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to get them on the prospect list.
Yeah. So company founded 2014, kind of SaaSified around 2019. And now where are you guys located? Do you have a headquarters? Are you remote?
Yeah, so we are remote. You know, like our workforce has definitely become more I guess dispersed, you know, over the pandemic, but our main concentration, our headquarters is located in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. So that's in Canada here in the Great White North. And this is where we're based out of. We just actually moved into a new office to accommodate our growing team.
Okay, great. And then, tell me about your team size, say employees, you know, full-time contractors. How much staff?
So we have 60 employees right now. You know, in 2019, when the pandemic hit, we were at 17 employees. And so, you know, kind of had some significant growth here since then. And up to 60 with plans to, you know, add another 5 to 10 seats. We did a lot of growth kind of in anticipation of this raise that we just completed. And so that was a big focus in Q1 and Q2. And so now we're sort of more into that execution mode with adding sort of key strategic pieces at this point.
Yeah. Okay. So right now 60 employees, 60, but at the pandemic hit, you're around 16, 17 employees and then grew up to 60 right now.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. That's great. And then anything you want to share around, say, you know, revenue range, ARR size, anything you want to share there for the scale of your company?
Yeah. Happy to give a range there. You know, we're between 5 and 10 million ARR.
Okay.
Is where we're at.
All right, perfect. And then, I always find it, fascinating with SaaS companies, so many different go-to-market motions. So tell me, is this like ACV, is this a low price point product, high price point, mid-market, because it kind of affects your go-to-market motion. So tell us a little bit about how you prospect and go to market with your product.
Totally. So the solution that we provide here at Andgo, around shift fill automation, the biggest value that it creates is around like in environments with high volume. And so characteristically, these are what we would consider enterprise accounts, like 5,000 and more. And so if you're familiar with like enterprise sales, like I like a lot of things about my business. One thing I don't like about my business is the long sales cycle in serving this industry, and a lot of that is accept the reality of it. But so knowing that we're selling into enterprise organizations, long sales cycles, right? There's multiple touch points. It really takes a community as far as, advisors and connections, and you need sort of that groundswell of support within, the other organization there for that. There's really three main buckets that we look at when we talk about our go-to-market strategy specific with enterprise. One is direct sales, and so that's our own pipeline. And we've connected with a number of one firm in particular that's been super helpful, just as far as setting up those outbound, I guess, structure and mechanics around contacting and connecting, and so kind of just getting it all set up so that our connections integrated within LinkedIn and our known contacts, and sort of developing that, and that's creating kind of a reliable source of leads. The other one is channel partners, and so we talked about these big scheduling systems, and so we're quite friendly with these scheduling systems. We're essentially like an automation layer that they can add within their ecosystem to provide this service to their customers. And so that really drives, a large part of our business. I think around like 35 to 40% of our pipeline is made up of opportunities from our pipeline, from our channel partners. And so that's a big piece there. And then the other one here that we're moving into is more of just like existing upsells, like from our customers. So our platform, we sort of transitioned and are positioning it more as a solution, and a solution that has these multiple components. You can break it down, and there are a number of different modules. And one of the value adds that we provide is to sort of be able to drive efficiencies so that these organizations can actually schedule for more people. Often you find in these enterprise organizations, there's sometimes like a central staffing office. And that central staffing office is scheduling for, say it's a 30,000 person organization, the central staffing office could be scheduling for 10,000 people. Why is it not 30? Well, usually it's budget, it's capabilities, it's capacity. And so Andgo comes in, we increase their capacity. So now that office can go from say 10,000 to 15,000, and that's a big increase of headcount and stuff like that, right? And which helps us in terms of on the revenue side. And so those are the big ones there. It's a lot of like direct selling, like I said, relationship building. During the pandemic, being in market wasn't as important, but that's starting to come back, we're finding. And of course, you're building some long-term relationships here, and that's hard to do over Zoom and stuff. And so looking to be more sort of boots on the ground moving forward in each of those different areas.
Okay. So three, and I could talk about this forever, but we have only so much time, but three buckets here. So direct sales, that outbound motion, channel partners making up a significant part of this, and I also focus on just expanding that existing customer base. And we talked about your industries, right? Healthcare, manufacturing, a bunch of others, but the persona that you are reaching after into these orgs, where they're big enough where it's actually, are you talking to an actual staffing scheduling department? Are you talking to HR? Like what kind of titles are you reaching out to here?
No, that's a great question, Ben. And there's a saying in healthcare. It's like, if you've sold into one hospital, you've sold into one hospital. Like, and so that's all that means, right? So it's very, very different. So not to kind of like skirt the question. Typically who we're looking for is operations, right? Like that's it. And director level or higher is what we're targeting. Every organization is different. Sometimes operations falls under HR. Sometimes HR is purely just sort of labor relations, kind of union stuff there. Other things around like operations, particularly like the scheduling portfolio. And so this is where there's a whole lot of navigation that goes on, so when we look at, staffing, we look at scheduling, we look at operations, we look at HR, sort of do a broad approach that way in terms of a market scan. From there, then we're looking at directors, VPs, folks that have those titles in those areas. And then we kind of
Yep.
see what lands and what's effective for those organizations, and then kind of build that organizational map as we're sort of doing those outreach and those discovery calls, just to see where it all plays. And so there's been quite a bit of variety, but the consistent thing is operations. The variety is where does operations live within that org structure. So
yeah, okay, love that. And then let's talk about funding. So you recently raised a 5.6 million Series A. How much capital have you raised to date now?
So that was our first raise.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been bootstrapped since 2014 all the way through to 2022. Finally took the plunge, did our Series A here, and made the raise.
Okay. And so the next question, so bootstrapped up to this point, so the first outside money raised. So what did you see as triggers, milestones that you, Tom, as the co-founder CEO, said, hey, I think it's time to inject a little money into the business and accelerate it?
Yeah. Well, there was sort of two things. And again, like kind of just going back to my earlier comments, it's the same theme. It's the same thing that got this whole thing started. It's the same thing that expanded us from like contractors to consultants. And it was really like the pursuit of an opportunity. This particular opportunity that we were talking about. So we're a Canadian-based company. We got a strong footing and strong market here in Canada. But we just at the time, had signed a US customer, and recognizing the opportunity here. And this really was, I mentioned we were 17 people before the pandemic. Well, during the pandemic, we got really busy, incredibly busy, grew significantly. And as fast as we were growing and as much as things were coming in, the opportunity before us was growing faster than we were. And so we needed to accelerate our growth to keep up with that opportunity. And that was kind of the thesis behind it. Specifically too, it takes a lot of capital really scale and grow a SaaS company, particularly when you're building out your customer success functions, you're building out your upsells, your product functions, all these different things. If I look back to our earlier days, like I said, it was a room full of engineers and myself. You got to manage everything else, right? Well, that doesn't scale. It got us to kind of that proof of concept, that MVP, and then we were able to build off that. And now as we're sort of need to kind of round out our organization with all these other functional areas, we needed capital to do so. The other one too, though, to be perfectly honest, the thesis behind it was to kind of find a 1 + 1 = 3 situation. We were profitable. I say we were profitable by $1 by design. We were spending everything we were making to grow, but we were looking for a value-add investor, someone who knew the market, someone who had operating experience scaling a company, and someone who was familiar with sort of our ICPs. And so those two things: one, the pursuit of the opportunity, the ability to connect with some expertise to really help accelerate and grow, and with sort of this overall goal of expanding. Like a large portion of our value here, organizational enterprise value, is going to be based on our ability to execute in the US, just like any sort of Canadian SaaS company. So we're no different.
Yeah, so really interesting, because it seemed like, all right, you probably saw some product for market fit, you had some fit there, and then it was almost maybe like intuitive sense or gut feeling that it's like, gosh, I just see that opportunity that is out there that we can just go capture. And I felt that kind of some of the stuff I do. It's like just the market is growing. There's just so much going on that we have a product that does work, and now we need to just push it out more.
Totally. And to that point, it kind of like, you look back at like sort of like key moments, right? It sort of crystallized for us when we did get our first US customer and recognize, okay, here it is. It's proven, right? Just more of that validation. You have this business that's been, supported all the way through. And the other thing I want to highlight too is that we actually have like just the stickiness of our solution. Like, so since inception, since all of our growth and all of our awkward growth years, we've maintained 100% logo retention throughout this whole thing. So anyone who's ever started to work with Andgo it continues to do so to this day. And so it speaks to sort of the need for the technology, but it also like speaks to sort of our service level, that we provide to our customers as well.
Yeah, I love that. And so as far as lessons, any tips, for the audience as far as going through this round or maybe previous fundraising experiences, any lessons that you'd like to pass on to the SaaS founder community that might help them for a future raise?
Totally. So I got a couple things that stand out, and this is one too. So we went through an accelerator when we called CTA, Canadian Technology Accelerator, digital health, that was launched. And one thing we got was like we got a lot of advice, and some of it was like contradictory and conflicting. right? And so that was one thing. Was like, well, where do you go here? But I think like some of our advisors talked to us and said, well, that's a good thing. You're generating these responses from people who are knowledgeable and have these opinions, and so that's the positive. But ultimately, this is your company, this is your story, this is what you need to decide. So you need to like take those as data points. And I remember, wholly feeling completely inadequate going through those processes, getting that feedback, right? And so I guess just to kind of like, you're doing good. This is your story. Be confident. You need to be coachable, right? You need to be coachable and take advice, but you also need to be able to know which advice to kind of put on the shelf and park and take in pieces, right? It's sort of this nuanced thing there. The other thing that we worked a lot on, like as far as advice that I recommend other folks to do here in a similar stage is really storytelling. Really, what is that narrative? What is that story that you're telling the investors about yourself? And I remember, going through the formula, Googling and looking at all the things that you do as far as like putting together that deck, putting together that presentation. Say, oh, I got to talk about TAM. I got to talk about growth. I got to talk about team traction, all this other stuff. But it was really kind of like siloed pieces that didn't really flow. And as I got good, or as I don't know if I'm good, but as I had more reps, I kind of recognized what worked and what didn't. And it really was like sort of these themes tied together through storytelling. And it's not unlike selling, right? I mean, selling is like stories retain way more knowledge than sort of facts and words and stuff. And so being able to, what is your story? Do you have a compelling story? Weave in all these other elements into that story. And that's one thing that really kind of was a switch for us we got pretty good at connecting, now. We were very fortunate. Like I said, we were bootstrapped, so we didn't have that financial pressure to raise. And so we took our time. We met with a lot of people, and meeting with a lot of people also allowed me to get more at bats, and in terms of pitching and talking. And so that really helped build that story, that narrative. And it's like, it's whatever it is, this Yogi Berra saying, it's 90% luck and 50% hard work, and I certainly believe that, right? As far as like all those connections go there. So anyway, those are kind of the two things. Like it's your company, take that feedback, be coachable, but then also, figure out what that compelling story is that folks can resonate, that resonates with folks.
Yeah, that's great. And surprisingly, or not here, storytelling comes up all the time with the founders I talk to is right. Yeah. Like you said, pitch deck kind of siloed, but connecting those points together to help tell the overall story, so yeah, really common theme. So
there's a company, so like it's been a while, so we went through diligence, and so like I haven't done the pitch deck here for a while, and I got invited to speak at an AGM or one of our funds AGMs, and a couple of the other portfolio companies, one of them's ramping up to raise, and you can tell that they've got that story and how they weave in these elements, and it's tight. And me, I felt like I'm out of shape, I'm out of pitch shape, because I haven't done it for a while, right? And so you kind of like use it or lose it, but boy, it's a beautiful thing when you see that come together and you see that story and you see it weave in all these elements that they're looking for. And it's wonderful.
That's great. Yeah. So get a lot of reps there. So as we wrap up here, tell us what's next for Andgo. What's exciting on the horizon?
Yeah. So we've signed multiple US customers. We're just in the process of onboarding and launching them, which is incredibly exciting for us. From a horizon standpoint, when we look at a product roadmap, if we look at the vision, there's sort of like 3 horizons that we're thinking of. We've talked today a little bit about automation and the value that it creates, right? It saves a ton of time, administrative time, provides accessibility, flexibility, all those great benefits, visibility. The one limitation of this technology in its current form, though, is that it is reactive, right? It is dependent on that employee calling in sick to then trigger all of these workflows, which are automated, which folks are willing to pay for. Where we want to move is becoming more proactive on that front, right? And what I mean by that is like forecasting. Okay, what's going to happen Thursday night? What's going to happen Friday night? And I think you see a lot of this, particularly in healthcare, like patient acuity demands, patient forecasting, things like that, as far as, work there. And that's great. Where Andgo is uniquely positioned, though, is really understanding that demand requirement, right? Like what's going to come up? What is that unexpected staffing requirements day of, right? Like that's where our data set is sort of geared towards. But just as importantly is like, what's your staff's likely response to that fluctuating change in demand, right? So there's a treasure trove of information that we're just moving into phase 2 of our data strategy, which is super exciting.
Yeah, that is really exciting. So it sounds like you could say, hey, in this industry, it's a Saturday, it's December, and based on maybe some other factors like, hey, we're predicting actually your no-show rate is going to be 10%, and it usually trends 4%, so be
Yes,
prepared.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. Highlights things so you can go like, fight fires in the future instead of waiting for them to be a scramble day of, right? And if you have chronic shifts that are difficult to fill, or you have, a group of staff members that are reliably, avoiding Sundays, you can sort of gain some of these insights and gain some of that pieces. And then the third horizon there, so that's the second one. The third horizon is like recognizing that, Andgo isn't 3D printing more employees, right? And in this sort of like in climate, like there's going to be shifts where you don't have people for it, right? Andgo is going to be able to deliver that answer to you very effectively and efficiently. But what do you do then? And so what a lot of folks do, what a lot of organizations do, is they turn to external labor pools, like so agency centers, right? Whether it's a big thing in healthcare, manufacturing as well. And so, for us then at Andgo, it's like, well, we could be that bridge into those labor pools. Well, we're not the staffing agencies. We operate upstream from them, right? We're getting that open shift at the point it's created in the schedule, and then we're working to fill it internally first. Again, it's about providing optionality to our customers, saying, hey, listen, if this thing doesn't get filled with your own staff, do you want to go to these other pieces there? And so then with Andgo, every shift is getting filled first with your own employees, if not there, and we're doing it sort of in an automated way that drives efficiencies there. So that's really excited to sort of make some progress on those horizons and gain some traction there.
Yeah, that is really exciting. I'll have you on in another year, maybe, and we'll talk about these new initiatives. So yeah, that's really exciting.
Yeah.
So Tom, really appreciate your time today. Love the story. Love what's going on at Andgo. And if folks want to learn more about your company, where should we send them?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks again, Ben, for the opportunity, sincerely. If you want to check out more about Andgo, our website's a great spot, andgosystems.com. Social media in terms of active on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, again, all Andgo Systems. And you'll be able to track and follow us there on those mediums there.
Okay, perfect. So check out Tom and Andgo at andgosystems.com. So Tom, really appreciate your time today and sharing your story.
Thank you, Ben.